So you may or may not have noticed, but planted on all of your on all of your seats are a packet of seeds. Yeah, so take those out. You can look at those. There are a variety of different flowers, and this is my gift to you. I want you guys to hold on to them and think about them. Not too much, though. Though small, the significance of these items is actually a lot greater than it may seem, and I'll explain that to you later. However, in the meantime, this is me. At around 6 or 7, a primarily homeschooled kid attending classes 3 days a week on a farm in Westchester. So it was here that my mother was told by a professional in child development that she should keep me away from the traditional public school setting, because there I would spend most of my time in one of 3 places, and that's the principal's office, detention, or special ed. Now, this is because at that age I was extremely, as my mother would put it tactfully, loud and opinionated. But as any professional in the matter would call it, I was hyperactive. A perfect example of this is a story that frequently comes up in my household, and much to my embarrassment, involves me forcing myself under a table after class ends, screaming at the top of my lungs and refusing to come out. Now, this is completely awful behavior, I know. But the reason for this behavior, as explained by my early educators, was that I wanted to continue learning, and I couldn't grapple with the concept that class time had to be over. It was clear to everyone, especially my parents, that I needed to be in an environment that fostered my energies towards creative and uplifting means. The name of this program is called Earth School, and it is part of the environmental education organization called Something Good in the World, founded by the visionary Barbara Sarbin in 1998. Here I remember spending 1st to 4th grade tumbling around in the dirt, writing poetry in the woods, and composting as a daily routine. I was introduced to Something Good in the World's philosophy on the Children's Peaceful Garden, and it was the center of the nature-based curriculum, and it served as my early outdoor alternative to a classroom. So the Children's Peaceful Garden takes a large open space in nature and transforms it into a collection of small, intimate spaces that cater to different modes of creativity and learning. So here I remember, just to give you a sense, right, of how drastically different this was from the norm, as a show of hands, who here in the audience at some point in their schooling had to memorize the 50 states in alphabetical order? All right, so as you can see, this is pretty much a standard in many schools in this country, and it's interesting how often that comes up. Alternatively, I spent my time building these gardens and eating some of the produce that I'd contributed in making. And in the process, I was learning about these plants and how each interacts with this environment, how they deter pests, attract pollinators, conserve water, use only renewable resources, and then composting what I was eating back into the environment. I was learning about the fundamentals of an ecosystem. The natural world and its processes excited my curiosity. And that was something that was shared by the other students. When we would read literature or history in those environments, there's a general excitement and focus towards the material that pushed us to excel on the few but legally instituted standardized tests that we had to take. So the kid that was at one moment yelling and screaming in the gardens was at peace and could find focus for his learning. So it turns out that the research actually shows that this makes sense. In 2004, the Human Environment Research Laboratory at the University of Illinois conducted a study that showed that students as young as 5 years old showed significant reductions in hyperactivity and attention deficit disorder while they were engaging with nature. So my rambunctious temperament in any other setting would have crippled me, but here my energy served to be an asset. So our play spaces were radically different as well. So as you can see, the apparatuses and outlined areas in which you're supposed to play on, they offer a pretty narrow choice of what you can do and how you can interact with your environment and those that you share that space with. Rather here, where what we had was open space and trees, we had to learn and cultivate the skill of creativity and of cooperation and working towards common ends. So another example from this garden is the Garden of Resolve. So in the Garden of Resolve, conflict resolution through peaceful consultation occurs amongst native perennial plants that show us how to live in nature, how to live in harmony based on the way that these plants actually grow. It was here that I learned how to have a conversation, how to articulate my ideas on things to others, and how to listen to the stories that people had to tell me. And I learned to value the collective learning and engagement of the group over the competition of the individuals. So again, the research that observes students in natural spaces parallels these experiences that I was having. In 2005, an American Institute for Research study showed significant gains in cooperation and conflict resolution skills among students that attended schools with outdoor classrooms or programs that utilize experiential nature-centered curriculums. The study also showed improvements in social studies, in math, in English, and one particular case involving outdoor science schools, students improved their science testing scores by 27%. Now, all of this research is very compelling, but my experience and memory of this time was much less calculated. For me, it was the sharp scent of compost and chicken coops. It was getting dirt constantly under my fingernails and being around the crawling of insects, animals, and sometimes dead animals, rotten things. These exposures familiarized me to what is typically seen in our society as gross. I came to see these things as natural, as they are. So I came to see these things as natural. And being able to see these things as natural and normal created, for me, a sense of safety, of where I was in that environment and where I was in the whole world. Now, in a broad sense, this should make sense, right? We come from the natural world, therefore, we should be our best, fullest selves within the natural world. However, through the norms of urbanizing, the standards of what is seen as clean in our society, and issues of liability in public schools, we've created a system in which students become learned out of their inner naturalist. We are now a species where more than 50% of our world population live in urban settings. And our great migration away from nature has its benefits. But what we gain in industrialization and urbanization, we miss out on in the crucial developmental benefits that being exposed to nature has. And it could be the reason for our collective disregard for the planet as a society. So there is a reason that the parents of some of the students that participated in the aforementioned AIS study witnessed their children engaging in positive environmental activity at home was because once one feels connected to the earth, they're more likely to advocate for its well-being due to an intrinsic appreciation for its worth. I truly believe that being connected with nature not only bears cognitive benefits, but creates an empathy for the earth that extends to wanting to ensure its survival. So, when it became time for me to attend public school, I suddenly became incredibly self-conscious about my lack of what I thought to be official schooling. I thought that my lack of science and math curriculums would leave me crippled once I entered the real world. However, the most jarring aspect of that transition was less the academics than it was the physical environment I was in. So I excelled in every subject. However, I rarely ever left the four walls of a classroom, having to walk in strict lines in the hallways, and the 20 minutes of designated playtime on a rigid concrete playground. It was so baffling to think that for so long, this had been the norm for all of my peers. So, how do we reconnect? This is a complex question, and the answer is obviously as well complex, but I believe that we can reconnect through two main approaches. The first is through research. So majority of the research showing the benefits of exposure to nature on children describe correlations rather than hard cause and effect data. But while the science needs advancing, we know at this point enough to act and to trust the research that has already been done. What we can do to create action through research is create the societal interest that will effectively then drive the research. The second is through avenues of education. So by incorporating the rugged aspects of nature seamlessly into our education systems and into our curriculums, what we do is we teach children not to fear nature as they already do. And through a connection and familiarity with the earth, we will as a society grow to more readily advocate for its health. The most exciting aspect of all of this is that nature-centered learning is so easy to replicate. It can begin with something as simple as building an organic garden, in a vegetable garden in one's own backyard, and having your family contribute in building that garden and sustaining it. In my hometown of Peekskill, New York, projects like this are already underway. So Peekskill, while being an urban city, a city nestled into the suburbs, the Peekskill Middle School has constructed a greenhouse adjacent to the main building that, and here, so students get the opportunity to actually get their hands dirty gardening, and they get to learn about community agriculture and about the resourcefulness of the planet. And it's really inspiring to see these kids, take the bite of that first tomato that they helped grow and learn that they themselves can be agents of this resourcefulness themselves. So I would like to draw your attention back to the seeds that you were given earlier. You don't have to bring them out, just acknowledge them. So when you get home later, or tomorrow when you wake up, find a place to plant the seed. Be engaged with the survival and aware of that plant's health. Let that plant's survival represent for you your newfound connection to the planet, and an understanding that in a broad sense, that plant's well-being means your well-being as well. So the seed represents the next generation. Nourishment for that plant represents the nature-centered learning that our children require, and the fully grown, healthy plant represents a symbiotic relationship between human beings and the earth, where nature's well-being and our exposure to it are seen as vital elements of our humanity.